So we found an old 36 Chevy that was painted all kinds of color, and we cleaned off the color with Bonami, and we did the engine, had a guy do the engine, and we came home in a 36 Chevy. And I had enough points. Now, I had only been in the service 2 years and 5 months. Okay, but I had enough points because of combat and whatnot. I chose to get out, stay in the reserves, get out and get an education.
Now, did you have any thought of making it a career at all, or?
Oh, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to fly transcontinental. I enjoyed the challenge and all of having to do that twice, that I thought that would be great. But there were so many guys getting out and so many pilots, and I was so young.
Yeah.
I said, I probably could have stayed in the service and gotten some more education too, but I thought this was a better way to go.
So took advantage of the GI Bill then?
Took on the GI Bill. Yeah, you get $90 a month, gee whiz.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you have your wife with you, you know, and you go to University of Colorado and get an aeronautical engineering degree, maybe. So that's what I did. And then there was the problem of getting a job. How do you get a job? I wanted to play football, but it just wasn't financially feasible. And probably a good thing, because on the average I weighed about 170, usually in good condition. And I had high school buddies that were 200 pounds or better, and they said, you made the right decision, because they ended up with some physical problems and so forth, except for Dale Dotterell, who turned out to be all pro. Anyway, so I worked at the Safeway store because I had done so when I was a kid at home. I got approved to be the newspaper agent in Estes Park for the Denver Post. And so in the summertime, every day that was my job. In the wintertime, I took care of papers up there on Sundays and worked at the Safeway store. I was so busy that I didn't have much time on studies, but I did a lot of studying in my sleep. No, my grades were pretty good, and so I only flunked one class. It was poetry. And when I graduated, I had helped at the Longmont Fairgrounds, trying to set up for their rodeos and that sort of thing, working for a brother-in-law. And I dug sewer lines in Boulder, and that's not easy because it's just nothing but rock.
Yeah.
Okay. So finally, and I was flying AT-6s and the Beechcraft, twin-engine Beechcraft in the reserve program. And so I was thinking maybe about being an astronaut.
Oh, wow.
Because Scott Carpenter was one of the guys and he never did graduate. He got an honorary degree, he never did graduate.
Really?
Anyway, so I didn't know about all of these things, and I found out that in Albuquerque, Sandia, they were hiring people. I got accepted into the government programs where you got a jet rating and so forth and so on. So I got all of the backup stuff that you needed in case you just had to go get a job. So I could actually work for the government as an aeronautical engineer at different places that do things aerodynamically. But I didn't know what they did in Albuquerque. So I put on my uniform. I went out to the Lowry Field and caught a co-pilot ride to Salt Lake City, and from there to Albuquerque. And I got there so that I could be available on Monday to have an interview. So I got there on a Friday, and turns out her brother lived there, so I could stay there. And so I went to church on Sunday and met some people and, you know, kind of got acquainted with the community and so forth. Guess what? When I went in for an interview, guess who was there for me to interview? The guys I met at church.
Is that right?
Yeah. Anyway, the good Lord takes care of you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was accepted. All I had to do was go back and get a physical. And so I found another ride as a co-pilot back to Denver, flying a C-45. And I continued with the reserve program until I got back to Albuquerque. Almost didn't get the job because I had a physical done at the hospital in Boulder, and they forgot to send my physical in for the interview.
Oh, gee.
So I had finally checked up on them to see why I wasn't being called to come to work. I got a $275 a month pay.
I mean, how does that compare to nowadays? Was that a livable wage or?
At that time, it was good. Nobody else was getting more money than I was.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
$275 a month.
Wow.
Okay, we eventually bought a car. $2,000 was the price. Brand new car. Anyway, so I went to work at, Okay, went to work. Guess what? They're building atomic weapons. And what you have is a team, a project team is established, where you have all of the technology that you need with that group. And management, it's usually 10 or 8 or 10 or maybe more people that forms that team. Guess what? I've been involved in teams all this time.
Right.
Okay, I'm the aeronautical engineer in that team. Okay, and the situation was we're in the Cold War. There was a little boy and the fat man. There was a Mark III and a Mark IV. And this team was responsible for the Mark IV and Mark VI. They were testing, full-scale testing, by putting together full-scale dummies, weight and all, and dropping them in the Salton Sea. And my job was to verify all that has to do with aerodynamics. For example, Sandia had a computer system made up of about 1 square block. That was the computer. And you had to create all kinds of, let's say altitude versus time, Mach number, and temperature, and all of that to make up bombing tables. Okay, I didn't have to get involved in the bombing tables because the computer can do that better than anybody else. Once you know what the coefficients of drag and all that is, the computer can do that.
So you were involved in computers that far back then?
That was all we had on computers.
Wow.
Okay, your slide rule, it wasn't good enough for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, from that, there was a problem was being created, and that was as they were concerned about arming and fusing. Well, a radar you can jam. So you needed something more reliable. Maybe not as accurate, but more reliable. Guess who got the job?
Wow.
It's my job to figure out how to use aerodynamics to solve that problem. The interesting thing was, you have to do a study of the aerodynamic pressure profile of the device, and then you have to study the application of the device. Is it stable in all Mach numbers or not? How does it react to all kinds of, like if you were going to drop it over Moscow in the wintertime, what kind of altitude versus Mach number are you going to get, and so forth and so on. And so ideally what you'd like to have is a sensor that tells you altitude, and you can set that altitude. So it's kind of like an altimeter, okay? But where do you sense the pressure that gives you that answer? Okay, well, if that pressure varies with Mach number, and you've got a thing that looks like this, how do you do that? That was my job, okay, to come up with a system that will do that.
Wow.
So that you don't have to worry about it, and you can't jam it. Okay? That was my first job. Actually, spent a lot of time in preparing and analyzing each of the full-scale tests that were put together so that you could analyze and determine the success of that system. It's not all that tough, it really isn't.
Sounds tough.
There are simple ways to do these things. So that was my first job. Interestingly, they gave me a helper, a guy by the name of Carpenter. Since Bell Labs took over from the University of California to run the Sandia lab, did I tell you Sandia's lab job was responsible for all things about the weapon except the nuclear part. In other words, Los Alamos and Livermore laboratories responsible for the design of the actual thermonuclear system, but the weapon itself got put together by Sandia. Okay, I kind of like to summarize my professional work experience. I think we were talking about working for Sandia Corporation. I spent 8 years there, and the highlight, I think, was the testing of the Mark 15 thermonuclear device out in the Pacific. The project team for that was someone from Los Alamos, and my immediate supervisor was called a director. I was manager of aerodynamics, engineering aerodynamics, and I was the aerodynamics person. And then we had an electrical engineer, and on occasion we had a person from EG&G which were involved with the recording of the result of an atomic test. The Red Wing tests out there, there were several. You can get a video of the tests that were out there, which will give you a breakdown of the types and so forth and so on. What was important in my case was to hopefully be able to have the weapon detonated at a given altitude at a given time. Okay, that was the highlight of my chore. And after that mission, which I was out at the Pacific a couple months, I guess, something like that. That's a story in itself. From that, came back to Albuquerque, and we were concerned about our parents getting old and needing care and attention. I just didn't want to leave Sandia, because it's such a human company and such interesting work and such great experience. But we decided we'd like to try to get back to Denver, the Denver area, so I went to work for the Martin Company. They were just developing the Titan missile, and I was hired as a systems engineer to help them plan their full-scale test of the Titan missile, mainly to come up with the directives that spelled out all of the specifics of what you're going to record and what things, what do you turn on, what you turn off, and so forth and so on. Very critical kind of stuff, because the instrumentation at the time wasn't so that you could just have any number of data points. So you had to be pretty wise about what you recorded and what you needed to have and how you had to analyze it. So I was involved in those the documents necessary for what they called laboratory tests. That's a full scale. Captive tests, or test firings out on the hill out there, and flight test. And of course, the experience that I had with the atomic weapons testing kind of fit in real good. So there was more to it than just aerodynamics. I was getting more involved in the total overall system needs. So I even stayed with it until Sputnik.
Wow.
And Sputnik happened. The Martin Company thought that they ought to be involved in all kinds of things that you might build to work up in space. And because of my experience with systems kind of work, I was given the task coming up with their first Martin Denver long-range plan. And this was a new experience, but that was my assignment. And the company came from Baltimore, and eventually we had several meetings about what that might be and so forth. And they had grand ideas about what they could do and were going to do. And I remember going to the last meeting on the long-range plan. They talked about all the grand things they were going to accomplish, and even the time schedule. And when they were about ready to shut down the meeting, I said, but what is your alternative? And the place got absolutely quiet, like stone dead. What I was trying to say to them, you know, guys, you're not being very practical. Don't think you can do this. But no, nobody said anything. They let it go at that. And about 2 weeks later, I got a call from Baltimore headquarters. What did you mean about alternative? because by that time, in that 2-week period of time, things had happened to the point that they were pretty sure they weren't going to get all the
Yeah,
stuff they
right,
thought they were
right.
going to get. So that was the first long-range plan I got to do. Of course, you do those by working with every every element of the science community part as well as the business community part. So it was a great experience for me to have to work that whole thing together, because I was putting this document together. Anyway, I was concerned. I tried to do what was called a customer approval on a test document. I had to go to California to an Air Force facility to get an okay for a document to okay a test with the Titan missile. Well, I got the okay. I came back, and what happened at Martin was about every other day or second, they reorganized. Oh, it was awful. I could tell you stories you wouldn't believe, but this concerned me because my new boss wouldn't accept my negotiations with the government, so I thought, it's time to be looking somewhere else. This has got to cease. And I had very good relationship with personnel people that went to work for Ball Aerospace. So they kept talking to me. They worked for Ball Aerospace. I knew a lot about Ball. I knew it was in Boulder. I was interested in doing this. So I went to work for Ball Aerospace. And Ball, at that time, were the producers of the Orbiting Solar Observatory. This is a satellite that studied the sun and other aspects of space. And in the process of doing that, they had to solve all of the technical problems necessary to operate in space. These guys got a job to build orbiting solar observatories for $1 million. And they were all physics students from the University of Colorado. It's just amazing how Ball got together with these young physics guys at the University of Colorado. Anyway, I'll try to go on a little bit here. So my first job there was to come up with what was called a request for proposal, RFQ, to transfer the science instruments that were on the orbiting solar observatory into a space station-like system, okay? And the request for proposal hadn't been generated by the government yet, and they wanted me to create a dummy so that we could get a head start on getting our science guys to preparing a response when that request came out. Well, that was my first job. And in that process, they decided that I should be manager of proposal operations. So, to make a long story short, there were times when we produced a proposal a day. And the science and study and whatnot was just fabulous. Eventually, let's see, how can I summarize this, make it simple? I actually ended up not only producing proposals to win new contracts for science, but today the US penny is made out of zinc and copper coated because I was responsible for the proposal, the technical proposal that got that contract.
Wow.
Anyway, not only that, but we actually ended up building prefabricated houses.
Huh.
Yeah, what happened was this ball company had guys that were very technically capable of coming up with all kinds of things. But they had a zinc plant that they had modernized, and they didn't have all the work they needed to keep that thing going like they needed it. So why not make the US penny and copper coated? That we did. And I have copies of the proposal right here if you want.
Wow.
And the house, the building houses, they come up with a way to build a complete house out of 4x8, well, I guess you'd call them, think of a 4x8 sheet of plywood.
Uh-huh.
Well, think of it as two sides with foam in the middle, okay? And the one side is outside and the other part is the inside, okay? They were able to come up with a way to do that. And so I got called in to produce a proposal to go build some prefabricated houses like that. And some of them were built. They were built in Sacramento, and they were built in Indiana. Gosh, I forgot the town in Indiana. Anyway, so we built other things other than the scientific instruments. Anyway, like I said, there were times when we produced a proposal a day. But I'm really proud of it because they were so technically capable, and the people that you had to work with were brilliant and fantastic human beings.
Yeah.
So finally they took pity on me, and they made me manager of public relations.
Really? Wow.
And, the reason for that was we had to strengthen our marketing capability, and that needed to have brochures and data, useful data that could be used to market. So I ended up being manager of public relations when I retired after 25 years.
25 years. Wow.
Now, what you don't know is this lady here and I were directors of a nonprofit organization called Youth Opportunities. For 35 years, we provided opportunities for young people in music and business. And why we did that was because our sons, we wanted our sons to do what they wanted to do like they like to do. And our oldest son was extremely gifted musically, okay? So we sponsored, to summarize it, we sponsored, for example, 2 traveling units. Each unit had, was a Greyhound bus that had 40 kids, 20 vocals and 20 musicians. And there were 2 buses, one went east and one went west. And they gave concerts on tour.
Churches, yeah.
Stayed at host homes and whatnot. But we developed this in a way where the kids didn't have to pay,
Yeah.
okay? So we created, for example, the first recycling program in Loveland, where we used the paper to develop a product. We picked up the papers, and we got kids and ourselves, as well as our kids, to unfold paper. Just unfold it, and from that you made pillows,
It's like a
or
tube.
you made a big roll of paper that could be used to protect flowers. If you were running a flower nursery, you needed the paper to help you ship these flowers. Okay. And all of this, our oldest son was the music director. He wrote all the music, trained all the musicians, organized the programs, and his wife was the business manager. And they traveled with their kids as they were born, and 15 years, I guess, something like that. We also had a musical show team. This was like 8 kids. They're kids. They were
Big young people.
8 kids that would do a
There were 9 years at Elitch's.
do a 1940s type music program. In other words, they sang and danced
Okay, yeah.
and put on a program,
Mhm.
be it 1940s music or the 60s or whatever else. And that particular function actually entertained at Elitch Gardens for
9 years.
how many? 9 years. So when you went to Elitch Gardens, that's the entertainment you got on the outside.
Wow.
So and we paid for this by selling the newspaper, by having garage sales, by selling Christmas trees
And Christmas tree lot out at the,
and that sort of thing. And the kids, when they worked, got paid,
yep,
okay? So
25 years selling trees out
That's-
at Elko.
that kind of ends it up. And so after I retired, I got to drive a Greyhound bus for a summertime.
Okay.
Can you imagine he went to work at Ball every day, and then after that,
Come
he
back
caught
and
up
did-
with the rest of us.
Wow.
The company put up with me. I received a community service award for the company, from the company, because of our service,
Yeah.
our community service.
Ball
Yeah,
actually took us both back to Ball, and we got to, because of our youth program, they actually had some people come and see what we were doing.
Wow.
we went, they took us back to Muncie, Indiana, the headquarters. They picked us up in Chicago.
In a little
I got to fly the company airplane
I didn't know
from
he
Chicago
was
to Muncie,
flying.
Indiana, and she didn't even know I was doing
I'm
it.
sitting in the back, in this little airplane, and there he is flying.
Fantastic company, Ball.
Wow.
You probably don't, do you realize that they don't make ball jars?
Anymore.
That part of the
Right.
company was sold off to another company called Jarden. What Ball mainly does now, 90% of their business is the aluminum cans for beverage.
Oh, really? Okay.
If you look on the aluminum can, you'll find a little Ball emblem,
Oh, wow.
okay?
Uh,
They also make, I'll just show you.
Oh, gosh, I don't know whether you're on or off.
Yeah, well, I'm still going, but, well, let's talk a little bit about family. 2 sons, and talk a little about them and grandkids, great-grandkids.
Oh, yeah. Our 2 sons, Dan, we were married for 8 years before we had Dan.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't geared to have kids, I guess. And she had several operations and whatnot. She was told she probably wouldn't have any. And so we decided that that won't work, so anyway. Dan was probably, he just didn't have any problem with anything. I guess he was a very interested in everything. His grandmother had musical skills and
Right.
talent, and she found out where it ended up.
Yeah, right?
She taught him, for example, he eventually ended up at the CSU on a scholarship, but he got acquainted with them when he was in high school because his grandmother said, you need to do this. And in class, well, let's put it this way. Dan, to summarize it, he was the director of the Youth Opportunities, New Light Singers and Orchestra, and all that. But he now has a production company. He produces major events across the country. He provides the sound, lighting, instruments, and staging and planning. It takes 2 big semi-trucks to handle all of what it takes to do what he does. And so that's one thing he does. He also is the representative for Johannes Organs out of Holland. And he is specialized in the musical aspects. For example, pipe organs is a specialty, and these organs that he sells and puts in, along with all the other stuff he does, he's the guy called in when they need to check or test or tune, so to speak, the pipe organs and the digital system. You can run the pipe organ with the digital, or you can just do the digital and you'll never know which one is doing which. Or you could even put a program together that you don't even need the one playing the organ there. Okay. What do I say? He's a concert organist also. So, and he and Dr. Kavara up at CSU, Dan never finished his CSU studies, but he's always been close to the professor. For example, in a class, Dr. Kavara would ask the class about something musically, and he would wait for the answer coming from the guys and so forth and so on. When everybody was through and he didn't have the answer he wanted, he'd say, Dan, tell him what the answer is.
Wow.
And they would play hooky, the two of them, and go and do things together. And they were that way until the professor died. Anyway, so Dan is going to eventually retire as a concert organist because think of, in the basement of his house, think of this wall here being a pipe organ. Okay? So he can go down and play.
Wow.
Now, that's Dan, but he's a shrewd businessman. And his wife she's the business lady. She handles the office kind of thing. It's just the two of them. They hire people to help them that they've trained. Like his son is an expert with a computer, okay? Justin is Justin's uncle. He's been trained in many aspects of the business, okay? His brother Robin also participates. His brother Robin was a major in the Marine Corps.
It's him, right there.
He was a choreographer in the musical programs that we had in our youth opportunities thing. He was the choreographer. He's skilled in just about everything mechanically. When he wants to give me a hug, I get a good one. He grabs me and throws me down. And if I'm not doing what he thinks I ought to do, he makes me do push-ups.
Oh.
There isn't anything.
I don't know, Robin was an insurance agent. He is the only scuba diver instructor as far as I know, in the Four Corners area.
Really, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Rebreathers is his specialty. He just recently recovered a boat off the bottom of Carter Lake. You get some idea of the skill and
Yeah, right.
talent
Yeah.
of the guy.
Oh, sure.
These guys aren't puffy,
Off the
they're
coast.
productive citizens.
Was it? I'm trying to think of the name of the dive that out off the Atlantic, down into the Monitor.
Oh,
Oh, the Civil War, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
the name of that?
The Monitor? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He
He's been down there.
he was part of the documenting those ships.
He just said,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. Now, each son has 2 kids. Dan has a boy and a daughter.
And they have
The boy I told you is very good at computers.
Mhm.
The daughter, bless her heart, I'll give you an idea. We took our grandkids one at a time wherever they wanted to go. We got on an airplane with her, and I was talking to the people as we got on and so forth and so on, and she says to her grandmother, "Doesn't that embarrass you?" And she said, "Oh no, he likes to do that."
He's friendly.
And so I found out about it. So when we were in,
Florida.
huh?
We were in Florida.
We were in Florida, yeah, at Cape Canaveral, having dinner. I always try to find somebody that I don't know, that I'd like to get to know, or I'd like to talk to them, you know. So I go get with those people. Anyway, to make a long story short, you can't shut her up now.
Oh, is it?
She and her husband have a company called
Blazing Illumination.
Blazing
Illumination.
Illumination.
Lights.
The Capitol building in Denver.
On
The
board.
lighting for there,
That's
that's those two kids.
Oh, wow.
In addition to that, they have other
butterfly.
venues
Yeah,
that
butterfly
they've done, so that's them.
lights.
The other son has a son that over the years has been involved in sculpture. He hasn't pursued that as his only avenue. With the training with his uncle, with lights and all of that sort of thing, he is involved as one of the team members with the production operation. And he's also does that with other companies. So because of his training with his uncle and whatnot, he's developed several skills that are useful, productive, okay? He has a daughter that,
Jessica.
yeah, Jessie is,
She's something else.
huh?
She's something else.
Oh, she's a nurse by training.
Registered nurse.
Right now, she's doing marketing as a nurse for laser therapy.
Spinal.
And so she travels on her own by herself to different places to instruct people on how and what to do in this laser business.
Mm.
And
So
yeah.
that's the grandkids.
Yeah.
Now, Robin is in his second marriage, has two daughters, adopted daughters, and one of them is an artist. She made a sketch of her grandfather by just using the word grandfather. And it's just incredible.
Huh.
She's out there.
She's a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And the other girl,
She's
she's,
a freshman.
yeah, she's just entering high school.
Yeah.
So
So did we cover all the grandkids? And the great grandkids, we haven't covered the great
Now we have 9 great grandchildren.
9, great, okay.
grandkids.
I think the count's right. 9.
Yeah.
Well,
They start
Dan-
from high
and-
school and go down to 2 years.
Dan's grandkids, our great grandkids, he has, Heidi and Nate have 2 girls.
Mhm.
And they're just, you know, in grade school,
Yeah.
come along fine. And Joshua, Dan's son,
No, he has a new little guy.
Huh?
He has one.
has one, a boy, little boy, he's 2.
Mhm.
And he's doing great.
Yeah.
And Justin, the kids, he has a boy and a
Oh,
girl.
he has Devin, who's
Devin and-
4,
Yeah,
and Kylie, who's in
Kylie,
second
yeah.
grade.
and
I think that's
yeah,
it.
that's it.
Makes 22
No,
altogether.
no, Jesse has, Jesse
Oh,
has,
Jesse has Baylor and.
has
Ron.
a girl
Mhm.
that
She's
looks
in the
like
ga-
she might be a soccer player.
Yeah.
Yeah, really is.
By that I mean, she's just so quick, golly,
And
she's
she's a
just quick.
straight A student too.
She's studying music and
Yeah.
the boy
Piano,
was born with part of his skull missing.
no soft spot.
He has had 4
Mhm.
major surgeries with Johns Hopkins
Back to Baylor, yeah.
and
Oh.
hasn't missed a lick.
Really? Huh.
Yeah,
And he plays football.
yeah.
Really? Huh.
He just loves it.
So that's it.
Well, it sounds like, playing off your belief, you raised a family that's very productive, very talented, multi-talented,
Yeah.
and productive family.
And
Yeah.
you know, the nice thing about it is they've all come home.
Yeah.
They're always.
Oh, they
love
have to get a pass to get out of town.
Now, do they?
And the swing out in the tree, my dad had one up there for us when I was a kid here. And Robin put it back up, and every now and then he gets a
Wow.
disc on the bottom and they all swing.
I've enjoyed this so much that I forgot I even had a backache.
Oh, good. Well, we'll start to wind down a little bit. Through the years, did you ever have any sort of reunions, or did you keep in touch with your crew, or?
Oh, they're all dead, except maybe
Except one,
maybe
the
Fish.
navigator, yeah.
maybe the Navigator. We're not sure.
Hmm.
Did we get together as a crew? No.
No.
Not that we didn't want to, but
We met,
I was in college.
Yeah, life just got.
Life just got beyond it,
Yeah.
except I kept very close touch with my hero, the radio operator.
Okay.
We eventually ended up living almost next door to the co-pilot,
Oh, really?
and that was interesting. But we never did. His son tried to get us together, but it turns out he was in a care facility. Apparently he was having problems mentally or something. I didn't try to find out.
Yeah, right, right.
I tried to be kind, so to speak,
Yeah, right,
with his family.
Yeah.
They tried to get us a special award because of the things he told them that he did. And that really got me into,
Kind of.
I said I'd be happy to support that if you just give me certain information. Well, they had trouble getting me much information, and finally, since they were giving me such bad information, like the feathering of the engine, you know,
Yeah.
he told them that he grabbed that feather button and he pulled that clear out of the panel. And it wasn't a thing you pulled out, you punched it. So I said, would you do me a favor, next time you get to a B-17, ask him if there's a cable attached to that button. And I hadn't heard from him since.
Yeah. No, that's a tactful
I
way of
hated
doing
it. I hated that.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Because really, there were some things that we could have done, because of the war ending, a lot of the rewards that you normally get didn't get filtered through the system. And I wasn't looking for rewards.
You're right, yeah.
That
yeah.
wasn't my,
Yeah.
I was happy, pleased with my circumstances.
Yeah, yeah.
But the radio operator, we had several get-togethers.
Yeah.
And we got together also with the 303rd reunion activities and got to know the families of some. For example, the engineer, the top turret gunner, the guy that, well, to give you an idea, he used to have to scrape the windows because of the steam coming off my collar and forming on the window. Okay, he'd have to scrape my windows so I could see out
Jeez.
to fly. Okay, so he took care of me.
Yeah.
I just can't say anything. Everybody was, you know, I hate to say anything bad about any. Personally, they were great. That doesn't mean that they know how
Yeah.
or can do.
Right, right.
Yeah,
right,
So you treat them like a human being and let it go at that.
right, right.
And like I said, the examples I gave you are personal kind of things.
Yeah, right.
I wondered a long time whether I should bring it up, but they can be funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So they can be entertaining at
Right.
the same time, as long as I don't put him down.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I didn't.
Yeah,
I used to go to London with the co-pilot,
huh,
yeah, and the radio operator. Okay, so we were good friends.
yeah, so you could set that aside and still,
Yeah,
yeah,
good
separate,
friends.
separate,
I wasn't trying to give them a hard time
Yeah,
or anything.
yeah.
What good would that do?
yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
You've been back to Molesworth.
Huh?
You've even been back to Molesworth.
Going back to Molesworth?
Yeah, you went back to Molesworth.
Oh, did you visit the old base? Did you get back and see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, took me with him.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a terrific escort. His name was Peter Park. That base is still a classified center.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah. And they did a lot of things during the Gulf War,
Oh.
communication-wise. No airplanes. But Peter Park was I could say, public relations guy. And he did a lot of study. He learned a lot about
Yeah.
me and,
He found us.
yeah. So when we went there, we had a terrific reception. They treated me like I was commander of the base.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah. Well, as we wind down this interview, I know we only got probably the tip of the iceberg of a very fascinating story, but is there anything else you wanted to talk about, stories that have floated to the top as we've been talking here? Anything you want to talk about that I didn't ask you? Or do you think by and large we did a good job of covering the story? And Vera, please inject anything, if there's anything he left out that you'd like him to talk about, so that ideally we covered your story as best we can, or do you think by and large we did?
I think we gave it a broad brush, don't you?
Yeah, you did
Yeah.
a super job.
I just was thinking here. I think what we would like to say, we're so proud of our kids, our family.
As you should be, yeah.
It's been a fantastic adventure.
Yeah.
I
We even
can't think
moved
of anything that could make it any better.
Yeah.
I wish everybody could have that kind of blessing experience.
All right.
I'm concerned about the world,
Man.
and I'm concerned about the USA. I think we've got off the track. It seems like we've lost sight of how we got started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much envy. The envy just eats you up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm proud of what I was able to associate with and be with and do.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think it's a good point to end. I want to thank you for sitting down to tell a fascinating story, but more importantly, Lee, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, hey, thank you. I enjoy doing it, and I just, people try to make people heroes, and the guys that are heroes are dead. Gee,
Yeah.
that's bad. Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Lee Bashor, 10, 11, and 12 years old, that sold newspapers in Estes Park. This is Lee Bashor, number 33, the right halfback on the 1942 state championship football team from Loveland High School. This is a PT-22 primary training airplane that I flew at Hemet, California. This is the PT-13 basic trainer that I flew upside down in formation, and we flew some instrument flying time under the hood.
Wow.
This is the AT-17 twin engine advanced trainer that I said was made out of string, plywood, and glue, but a very good airplane to learn instrument flying and night flying. This is the simulator that was extremely important for learning how to fly on instruments.
Boy, it seems so rudimentary when you in comparison to the simulators we have today. But you were able to get some great experience off of practice off that.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is invaluable.
Yeah. Huh.
I got as much time on the link trainer as I could get.
Huh.
The newlyweds. Vera and I are, at the time this picture was taken, we were in Rapid City, South Dakota, but we had gone up to Mount Rushmore to have an afternoon of fun. Yes, we were newlyweds, and we were sure enjoying ourselves.
How long were you guys together before you shipped overseas, roughly?
Well, see, we got married in August, and I went overseas in, I think, the latter part of January.
Oh, okay. So roughly 3 or 4 months then was all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
B-17 was a fantastic airplane to fly, but even more fantastic was the life Elvera and I have had as a team.
Wow.
This is the B-17 cockpit showing the instruments. What a neat airplane. And I feel comfortable just sitting right there trying to take off.
Was it physically a hard plane to fly? I mean, from a physical standpoint, controlling? No?
No.
No? Do you think you could sit in the cockpit today and go through the full flight setup? Is it all? Do you think it would all come back to you?
Checklist?
Checklist?
Oh, you got to do the checklist.
Yeah.
Okay. No matter how much you learn and how good you think you are, you do the checklist.
Yeah.
This is an airplane named Thunderbird. This is shows the markings of the 303rd Bomb Group on the tail, the triangle C, and the other markings are for shows the 303rd Bomb Group. There was actually a Thunderbird like this airplane, this particular airplane is one that is now flying around the countryside giving demonstrations around the country. This is the Lee Bashor crew, they called it. We're with the airplane that we flew most of our missions in. Sweet Little Rhonda was the name.
And how did that get named?
That got named by the first crew that had the airplane.
Oh, okay, so you had no.
There were some 71 missions prior to us getting this, and they never had an abort,
Really?
that
Huh.
airplane. Neither did we.
Huh.
And this shows my crew. I think I see, yeah, we're all there. The, what I guess I, pointing out that this is the top turret gunner, the engineer.
Uh-huh.
That's the tail gunner. That's the, man, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
co-pilot. Okay, no. That's the bombardier.
Mm-hmm.
This is the radio operator. This is me. This is the waist gunner. And I'm sorry, this is the tail gunner. That's the ball turret gunner.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, that's a picture taken by my radio operator while I was sitting in the pilot seat ready for a mission. This is the painting of the lady called Sweet LaRonda on the airplane. We called the airplane Lady Patches because she had a lot of holes patched on her tush. So the guys wanted to name her Lady Patches because we couldn't change the airplane and whatnot. So whenever they talked about the airplane, it was Lady Patches, not Sweet LaRonda. Well, this is the flight path to get to England. And notice that there are several routes that you can take, but in my case, I took the route that went from Goose Bay to Greenland to Iceland to Valley, Wales. The aerodrome at Molesworth, I'd like to point out that my airplane was parked in this spot right here. And you can see we have 3 runways, and
Now,
that's about it.
where's Molesworth located in England, roughly?
Northern part of England, north central part of England.
Now, by the time you got over there, I don't know if they
It's
still.
next to Cambridge.
Oh, okay. Did
Molesworth, this little burg. Cambridge is a major town.
I imagine by the time you got over there, they didn't have the capabilities. But did this base ever get bombed by the Germans?
No,
Yeah.
but I got bombed.
Oh, you did.
I went into London,
Oh, right.
and they had bombs hit one day, and just to show you how things are, we didn't even get up out of bed and go look.
Jeez.
We were tired. One time I was in London, and they had feather bed, and I slept for 24 hours.
I'll bet. Oh, wow. Wow. How did that begs the question too? How do you think you handled that? I mean, you probably weren't getting enough sleep, obviously from the sounds of it. I don't know what the food was like, but On top of that, you had the stress of war. How do you think you physically functioned with all that going on? I mean, it was just youth, or
Yeah, youth is a big part of it. Boy, because that's, there's a lot of activity flying the airplane.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, there's physical exertion, not that it had to be ground in like that. But if steam comes off your collar, you're doing something.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So you're in good condition. Very good condition.
I guess I never did ask what living conditions were like for you guys. I take it you lived in a Quonset hut, or what were your living facilities back at the base like?
Oh, well, it was a Quonset hut, and you had a stove in the middle of it that you could put wood or coal or whatnot in it. We had, it was connected to, the stove was connected to a container that had old crankcase oil. So it would drip in there, the crankcase oil, and burn.
Huh. Wow.
And the beds were bunks, obviously. I had the lower bunk on mine, because after all, I was the first pilot. No,
Yeah.
forget that.
Yeah.
So the environment was, there was, in my case, there was always, seems like somebody in the hut. That meant that not everybody was on a mission all the time. So there were people that weren't on a mission at times.
Did you ever lose any of your hut mates, or did everybody? I always heard that was a tough thing to come back and find a hut mate's belongings picked up and gone. And there was. I was new, so I didn't know this person, because I had just gotten in the hut and so forth, and he didn't come back. Mm.
So they came and got his stuff. Boy, I'd forgotten about that. Huh?
Yeah.
Came, got his stuff, and gosh. A kind of an interesting thing in living there. The co-pilot to one of the other crews, by the way, the first pilot was a heck of a neat guy. He was in his late 20s. He was not a kid anymore. But he had a co-pilot that was in there. That reminds. That was kind of interesting. He had his co-pilot and I had mine.
Right.
But nobody else did. So they were just pilots. Anyway, his co-pilot kept telling us that that they used to clear the streets when he got drunk. And so, this guy is just spouting off, trying to get attention or something, So one day they completed their missions. He was not going to have to go on any other missions. And I came into the officers club, and he was up to the bar, and they were having a drink. And as I approached, he slammed the guy's arm that had a drink in his hand. He slammed his arm, and he had the strangest look on his face. And I looked at that, I said, what's going on? And there was a little bit of, not a scuffle, but pushing around a little bit, why are you doing that, so forth and so on. So I thought, well, I liked the guy, I was interested in talking to him, seemed everything fine. So, but I didn't bother. I didn't get involved in it. I went to the to the bathroom and finished doing my job. And as I was about to go out the door, he showed up. And he obviously was wanting to have to argue with somebody, but it wasn't going to be me.
Yeah.
So I just brushed him off and went back to the hut. Heck, I no more got there and laid down, and the door flies open, and he's standing there, a raging maniac-like looking. And his first pilot is on the upper of the bunk, and I could tell something had to happen. Well, his first pilot came down, and he got him right on the chin, and I took him in the middle. Finally got a full Nelson on him, pulled it down, and his first pilot gave him another whack. And I threw him in his bunk.
Huh. Wow.
And he was like he was a dead man. He was totally non-responsive at anything. In about 15 minutes, he woke up and he didn't know what happened.
Huh.
He said, "I warned you guys. You didn't believe me when I said they cleared the streets when I got drunk."
Well, I'll be done. Huh.
Yep. Again, you never know what people are going to do.
Right.
Mission number 7 was interesting because we got struck by lightning on takeoff, but it also, we also had the Four over France, and we had some problems around the target, and coming home was kind of an exciting adventure also. So this will give us a chance to talk about the various things you had to consider when you went on a mission.
Wow.
These are silk maps, or the maps that are printed on silk. They were part of the escape package that you had along with a compass and other items that would help you be able to find your way down if you had to bail out. So along with morphine is another thing that they gave you in your pack. So you had something that you could use to help you if you had a health problem.
Okay. And you also said you carried a 45?
And I also carried a 45 underneath my arm, my left arm. Other than that, this was a very useful item, and thank goodness I didn't have to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you were given a few tools to allow you to have a chance to maybe escape.